edition of the Robo Truth Show. Happy Monday, viewers, and I am over the top excited. Yes, I know you guys always hear me say I'm over the top excited, but I'm really over the top excited because look, I am not sitting on the set alone. I have my first guest of 2018. Minister Yolanda Brown is sitting here with me. How are you, Minister Brown?
Absolutely wonderful.
Oh, this is
it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you for being here with me. This is a woman I absolutely admire on so many levels. You are a mentor to me, a friend, and you are so anointed in the things of God. I just had to have you on the Robo Truth Show.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so our show topic for today is entitled Healthy Grief. And so I think this is an apropos time to talk about the process of grieving in a healthy way when you consider all the things that we're going through in our country today. And people just don't have questions. Well, they have questions. They just don't have a lot of answers when it comes to the process of grieving. So Minister Yolanda Brown is a professional grief coordinator and a grievance counselor. Is that right? Did I say that correctly?
I wouldn't say counselor, but
Okay.
I support people through the process.
Okay, so she supports people through the process, which is very, very important when you lose a loved one. So tell me, how many years have you been in this profession?
I've actually been a bereavement coordinator for 6, but I've been in hospice care for 12.
For 6, you've been in for 6 years, with hospice care for 12. Okay, tell me a little bit about your experience in those areas.
I started as a chaplain,
Okay.
which was an amazing experience. Just being with people as they transition. It's just it's such a awesome place to be. It's a sacred place. It's a very personal place, and for people to allow you to come into that space as they transition, I look at it as a team. Just like when a baby's born,
Right.
There's a doctor, there's a nurse, and there's this team as you transition.
Right.
So you have to have someone to help you transition back into eternity.
So what drew you to this ministry, or rather this line of work? Because I know it's both for you, right?
Yes.
Yes. What drew you
It
to
was
it?
definitely a call.
Okay.
This is not something that you just wake up and say, I'm going to do that.
Absolutely.
It started actually as a child.
Okay.
I found myself being around seniors and asking questions that you ask as you help families go through the process.
Okay.
As a little girl, I would go from house to house, talking to my neighbors, asking them how they managed to stay married for 40 years.
Oh, okay. So you
And-
were that inquisitive little
Yes,
girl interviewing
yes,
people.
I was just doing what I do now.
Right. Okay.
And watching the reaction and having them laugh at me and looking at me like, why are you asking these questions?
This little thing,
This
right?
little girl, you know. And it was just an amazing time in my life. And when I went into my residency program at Christiana Hospital, one of the things we had to do is we had to write out why we thought we were doing this work.
Okay.
And when I began to write, that's when I realized that I had been doing it all my life.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome. So why don't you tell me, what does an average day at work look like for you?
Well, on an average day, my caseload is about 400 families that I follow for 13 months.
Is that all?
Yes.
Wow. That's a lot.
And so when you come in, you have deaths that occur during the night, and then we come in and we discuss the families and what they need.
Right.
There's a call that I make within 72 hours just to kind of get an assessment for where the family is.
Okay.
And as a team, we support the family. We go to the funerals if need be. We'll help with the process of finding a funeral home. But my role with the team is supporting not just the families, but also my team. Because the nurses and CNAs, sometimes they get very close to the families, and when the death occurs,
Right.
they deal with their own process of grief. So in my office, I have a chair. And I
Okay.
have my music therapy, and I have my aromatherapy, and
Right.
they'll come in and just sit in their chair and just
Okay.
start sharing with me. So I'm supporting not just the families, but also my coworkers.
So how do you keep yourself, from not being, emotions have to be involved, because I know you know, in that healthcare field, you can get attached to your patients and the people that you work with, and when they're transitioning, how do you keep yourself
Well,
strong?
as the role as a bereavement coordinator, I'm not as close to the families.
Okay.
I come in at the end.
Okay.
What I try to do is get my team to work with the families through the process,
Okay.
and then they kind of hand them off to me.
Okay.
And so I'm not as attached.
Okay.
So as we go through that, I'm walking them through it, helping them find counselors, support groups, different things like that. But I have had a few that get in.
Okay.
As a chaplain, I would get very, very attached to
And how do you
families.
deal with that?
Prayer, music, you know, it's just like when you're going through the grieving process, you need tools.
Right.
And the same tool is not going to work every day.
Exactly.
So you need a toolbox.
Okay.
And I
Tell
have
me
an
about some
awesome
of the
toolbox.
tools for that you use for you personally.
For me, music, cooking is my favorite.
Okay.
When I'm having a rough day, I can come in and chop up some onions,
Okay.
and peppers, and make the most amazing meals. And my son and my husband would say, "Oh, she had a bad day."
Oh wow, is that what they say?
Yeah,
Cooked.
she had a good
She
day.
cooked
We're
up a
having
storm,
good
so it
day,
must have been
yes.
a rough day.
Mhm.
What about the
So-
tools for the families? What tools do you recommend people who are
Journaling
journaling?
is a big one.
Okay.
And then just having that conversation, sometimes even with a chair. You know, those things that you've never had an opportunity to have,
Okay.
you know, to say to a person. We do a memory bear program where I'll take the clothing of the deceased and make a bear for the families.
Oh wow.
I have them do painting work,
Okay.
writing. Just, you know, I get a feel for where the person is
Mhm.
and then kind of develop a plan that would fit into what they do.
Okay. How long are you working with the family after
I'm with the families for 13 months.
13 months?
13 months,
Okay.
which is a series of phone calls, newsletters, mailings, memorial services, workshops.
Okay.
I do a grief workshop that I include painting,
Okay.
which is one of my favorite things to do.
So I know, when I think about all of these things you're saying, counseling and journaling and painting and talking to a chair and making a bear out of the clothes that your loved one, you know, may have left behind, I would have never thought about any of those things, you know, if someone in my life had passed away. And I'm sure other people who are watching probably haven't either. How important are these things to grieving in a healthy way?
Very important. I look at grief as just like fingerprints.
Mhm.
Everyone does it, processes their grief differently.
Right.
And getting a feel for the person and where they are,
Mhm.
you need to be able to move through. That the first year is the hardest because you're dealing with birthdays and all of these, I call them triggers,
Right.
that will come. You know, as Christians, we're not supposed to mourn like the world, but guess what?
Right.
Jesus mourned for us, and God mourned when Jesus died.
Yes, it is.
And so we're a spirit, a soul, we live in a body.
Right.
And so we have to use all the tools that God has given us
Mhm.
to get through that process.
That's an awesome experience, and it's timely because of the horrible things that we're facing in our country right now. And just like when you consider, you know, the shootings just in Florida and all of those unexpected children, teachers, and deaths that just happened, there are devastating hearts that are crying and that don't know what to do right now. They are going through shock, anger, you know, just complete devastation. And I know your line of work is kind of hospice care.
Yes.
So that death is expected, but it's still difficult.
It's still difficult.
But what would you say about a death that's just unexpected, that just happens out of the blue?
You know, you're still a loss.
Right.
It takes a while to even process the loss. These people will never get over this. This trauma will be with them. They'll be 5 years down the road and hear a gunshot and just be traumatized, go right back to that same place.
Yeah.
And so they're bringing in people that are used to working with trauma victims and just teaching them how to understand the triggers and how to react to them. One thing about grief, in order to grieve, you have to love. And love is a process.
Okay.
And grief is a process.
Right.
It's just understanding, and everyone is different. Like even with myself and my sisters, we all processed it differently.
Mm-hmm. Right.
You know, because each of our relationship was different with each person.
Right.
So the deeper the love, the deeper the grief.
So this is an awesome, awesome conversation. We talked a lot about grief in your professional arena, but you're going to be here and we're going to come back next week. And we come back next week, we're going to talk about Minister Yolanda Brown, the minister, and the gift that God has given you from a ministry perspective, how that came about, how that evolved, and how you're using it today. And again, Minister Yolanda Brown, the topic today is healthy grief, and it really does correlate with the book Angels, the Discovery. She talked about tools, and one of the tools that God has given me is this book, and it talks about giving and providing comfort to people who have lost loved ones unexpectedly, and just a glimpse into heaven and their experiences and what they are going through now that they have left their mortal bodies into their eternal bodies. So why don't you join us again next week for the second half of this show. In the meantime, as always, I always encourage you to stay real, be bold, and tell the truth in Jesus' name.
Yeah.